Hey there guys, it's Metro, and today we're taking a detailed comparison of all the tanks in Legion patch 7.0, 110, and further, okay? Now, before we start with that, I just want to say all of this is based on opinion, experience, and predictions, alright? I've put a lot of time into Legion beta, but it is still beta. None of the boss fights are live. None of the dungeons are live. And even though we're very late in the beta, there still may be changes being made. I doubt it, but it still can happen. So that being said, this is basically just a projection for me. All right. So if you guys are making this decision, you know, if you're watching this video thinking, what tank should I play? I'm going to try to give you the best information I can. All right. I promise that. But do not take this as law. I really want you guys to make sure you play the class and you try it out yourself, all right? And give it a fair chance, because just because I say something is good, I say something is bad, does not mean that you will not enjoy it or be able to play it to the level that you hope to be able to, okay? So let's get right into it. So we'll go through a list of criteria on each tank. The order the tanks are going to be discussed from my head is the order that I like them, but that does not mean anything other than that. All right. At the end, we'll discuss a full comparison of the actual tanks based on the criteria I'm divulging here. So you can look at that. All of that stuff is going to be in the description. But yeah, let's get started. We'll go with Monk first. Brewmaster Monk. Now, a lot has changed for them, especially with guards removal. Their defensive kit and CDs in general are obviously very different. So, my opinion on that is that they have very weak CDs for just standard melees. I'm talking about even in 5-mans. Like, doesn't matter what you're taking. If you're taking hits every second, then you're not very good at mitigating them. And even that's even with stagger. It's just because of how the kit plays. Like, they don't have, I don't know. They just lack that. Stagger just builds up way too quick. Now, they're very strong for large burst damage. So, like anything, and we'll talk about this in a bit, but any large, predictable hit is extremely, like, they're just perfect for it. You could really do wonders with the kit they have currently. In terms of self-healing, it's moderate. It's actually pretty good in 5-mans, but I don't think it's going to be strong enough to have an impact in raids, unfortunately, especially not like some other tanks. But the one thing that you really could say about their defensive kit is that the haste scaling is absolutely insane. Like, it is so unbelievably good, because first of all, Keg Smash is more usable, and using Keg Smash reduces the CD on your brews and stuff. But specifically, fortifying brew, guys, is now modified by Keg Smash. I made a video on that a couple weeks ago, but yeah, that was a recent change, and that is insane. All right, and that's also leads to some very good synergy with talents. Their 100 tier especially is actually all three really interesting, so I kind of like that. I'm really looking forward to this defensive kit in some situations. Now, on terms of damage and their damaging CDs, that's next on the criteria list. They're extremely bursty with Keg Smash and Explosive Keg. I'm going to say that they have the best burst, especially since it's all AoE in the video game for any tank. But they have no real damaging CD besides Explosive Keg, unless there's some talents you take, but I would not recommend them. Maybe they'll prove to be good, but as of right now in the beta, they did not impress me. So, yeah, very good, 7-second Keg Smash, whatever it is, by haste, and then, however long Explosive Keg becomes, it's been cycling between 1 and a minute and a half, so whatever it ends up on beta is good. Now, mobility is obviously a staple of the Monk. The start to finish design of Monk always included roll, so you'll always have roll, and that is a very good type of mobility for tanking. But they don't have dizzying barrels, dizzying haze, whatever it's called. You toss the barrels at the mobs and kite them like that. You did in all the dungeons back in Mob. You don't have that. That's gone. So it's like, I don't know. It's kind of weak in terms of that, but their actual mobility is really good. Like, if you take that in a vacuum, you look at how fast they can go from place to place with multiple rolls, it is still very good. In terms of utility, they have some, they have leg sweep. All right, that's a really good AoE CD still for stunning. There's really nothing else in the game other than Prot Warriors. No other tank has an AoE stun anymore, not even Blood. So Yeah, that's very good. But other than that, they have no real utility. They don't bring anything to the 5-man group other than leg sweep. So the 5-man situation, reflecting on all that, is that they're very speedy with rolls. Mobility is very important. They have top tier burst AoE. Like, I would say they are the best burst AoE spec, and that is what 5-mans are, start to finish, all about, controlled burst AoE. But their short CD mitigation is, I would say, actually ideal for 5-mans as well. On paper, that's what you want. You want very short CD mitigation that you can use on every pack. Because in dungeons, there's never really that one situation where you're just going to wipe to that, die to that every single time, like there is in a raid. So you need to be able to make the whole process smoother. And with the shorter CD mitigation, that's how you do it. Now, the raid situation, upon reflection, is they have a potent short CD reduction for a very large damaging hit, right? So we kind of talked about this before, but Tortos is basically the best example I can give. If you guys remember that fight, Snapping Bite was the name of the mechanic. It's basically just like every once in a while, Tortos bites a tank and it does massive, massive damage. Now, this is exactly what a Brewmaster is tailored for. You can just, Iron Skin Brew, take even less damage from that, and then immediately clear the stagger. So it's like you basically just reduced a massive, massive portion of that damage. And that's what they're made for, guys. But their actual meleeing, while you're just standing there getting meleeed by the boss, is gonna it's gonna take some healing there. So yeah, that's Brewmaster Monk. The Vengeance Demon Hunter is next on the list, and we'll get right into it with the defensive kit and CD discussion. So they have a very strong short CD reduction, and it's very strong because it scales off haste, firstly, because you can use it more often the more haste you have, and then it scales off mastery. The more mastery you have, the more potent it is. So they're basically primed and ready for Mythic 5-man progression. It just seems insane how good they're going to be for it. And they also have strong self-healing. Now, that's a big difference between them and most other tanks. In 5-man progression, guys, you really need strong self-healing as a tank. If you could heal yourself up, then the healer could do more damage. So that's extremely good. And they actually have some really good talent choices as well. Their talent choices make them very, very flexible, and they're taking great care to buff and nerf the ones that are the outliers. So, and they also have a great magic CD. It's up there with AMS. I think it's honestly just as good. It doesn't absorb it, but it just reduces it. And the good thing about it is it's actually a CD. It doesn't require anything else. So very, very good. Their one flaw in their defensive kit is that they have no shield wall type ability. They have Metamorphosis, but it does not actually reduce damage, just increases health. So that is their one flaw, and I think that'll ultimately hurt them in raids. But in terms of 5-mans, they don't need it. They have everything they need, and it's crazy. So in terms of damaging and CDs, damaging CDs, of course, that is the next on the criteria here. Defensive CDs also do damage for the most part. Their artifact does damage. The fiery brand does damage. Even their mobility can do damage if you take certain talents and all this stuff. So yeah, almost everything they have does damage in some way, or at least leads to damage. And of course, Immolation Aura is a lot of that. So that's really cool. They have very consistent AoE because of this. The sigils and the Immolation Aura do a lot of AoE, but it also heals you and is part of defensive. So very, very cool. But unfortunately, their single target continues to get nerfed. It seems like every build they nerf their single target in some way. So I have a feeling they're going to struggle on that front. Next up is mobility, and that is not, we basically shouldn't even discuss this. They are the most mobile tank ever in any video game that I've ever played. It's unbelievable. Leaps can close distance or create distance, which could also be very good in 5-man situations. But talents even open up more synergy with their mobility, and even some more mobility. Fellblade is a talent that you can take, and it's like an extra charge. And it even, does a lot of damage and generates pain. So it's just unbelievable, the mobility they have. And that's not to mention Glide, guys. Glide is basically the most overpowered passive thing I've ever seen in my entire life. It's unbelievable. Triple jumping and gliding away from mobs can actually be a damage or a damage reduction. So just crazy. Their mobility is unbelievable, unparalleled as well. Utility, though, is not their strong suit. Sigil of Chains is basically a poor man's Gorfiends. Now, there's ways you can make it better, but I find it's very difficult to use because a lot of the times pathing inhibits it, and of course mobs simply are a little bit too far away from it. So you can't, if you make a mistake with it, you're screwed. And it's pretty long CD, but there are some ways you could make it a little bit better. Sigil of Silence, though, can be good if you're not a Blood Elf. It's just an AoE silence, so you can grip everything in and then silence it, and hopefully it'll be dead by then. You don't have a stun, but that's the most that you can do. Then they have Darkness, which is this really weird 3-minute CD. I don't like it at all. I find it very situational, if at all, because I can never use it properly. Every time I use it, it doesn't seem to do what I expect it to. So I don't know, but it's probably going to be cool for raids. Now, the 5-man situation, reflecting on all that, is that they have an extremely flexible kit, guys. I'm not talking about their body either. Their talents are insane. Their mobility is insane. They can do godlike things in 5-mans. I think they're really, really good for 5-mans, mostly because of how fast-paced they are. You could literally just keep going. Like, you can cover such distance in such a short period, and their self-healing is very high in comparison to any other tank right now. Maybe not in comparison to Warlords of Draenor, but very, very good in terms of other tanks. So they are really good for 5-mans. And then raid situation is they have a very short CD on their physical reduction. So this is going to be very good for just tanking melees, kind of the opposite of what we talked about with Monk. And it's going to get really crazy with higher gear. Like once you have high haste and mastery, you can pretty much keep that thing up all the time, and it's a very large reduction. They also have a strong magic CD, which can be very useful, but unfortunately they don't really have any strong, like, a shield wall type ability. Or it's like, all right, guys, in 5 seconds I might die, so I need to use this CD. They don't really have anything like that, but they do have a cheat death talent, and in fact, they're 100 talent. Well, it's actually 110 talents for them. Their max tier talents are pretty interesting. They're all very tank related, so yeah, that's Demon Hunter. I'm pretty happy with their implementation, honestly. So Blood Death Knife is up next. Their defensive and CD kit is obviously a highly focused topic of any discussion. They have obviously a very high healing focused kit. Okay, I don't think anybody's going to be surprised about that. But they do have a rotational reduction in Bone Shield. Acts as a functional absorb as well, though, in Scottish. So that's another thing to add to their healing. But I don't classify that as self-healing, by the way, guys. Stuff like that gets added is not... You have to actually increase your health, if you ask me. So... but they do have lots of talents and artifact synergy that make their health pool a little bit higher and change the way they heal. So that's really cool. And also diseases now heal as well. So yeah, with all the artifact synergy, I feel like they're going to be really high health, really high healing tank. The one thing that they don't have, though, is a very strong, like, Icebound Fortitude type ability is gone. So yeah, that may come into play. We'll talk about that in the rating section, but... Damaging CDs, of course. Blood Boil, #1 on that list. It keeps getting buffed too. I don't know how it's even happening at this point, but yeah, it still is. So, and then the disease is healing and everything, like I said. So you can pop Rune Weapon, and there's actually a talent to make a third weapon appear with Rune Weapon up. So it's like 3 diseases are going to get applied to the target, which is obviously an HPS and a DPS increase. I think they're going to be probably, like, Monk is really high burst AoE, but Blood is really, like, consistent AoE. Like, I think Blood would do more AoE over a minute AoE fight, So now in terms of mobility, they have the weakest mobility. They're almost up there with Paladins, but the thing is, they got Wraith Walk, which is really cool, but it's still the weakest because it has to be channeled. So the thing that I think a lot of people don't think about in terms of mobility is that oftentimes, especially in 5-mans, you need to run through mobs with your mobility. You don't always just run to them. That's something that I think a lot of people don't realize when they're tanking. Like, sometimes if you're trying to pull 2 packs, which is very common, you need to go through the mobs with the speed boost, because if you run to them, then first of all, you've just outpaced your healer. And then second of all, you're going to get a bunch of melee hits while you run through them. So if you run through them very quickly, you'll get probably a few less melee hits, and your healer will already be up there, So that's the way you want to use it. But when you use Wraith Walk, you can't do any damage. So if the healer starts healing you or anybody starts attacking the mobs that you ran through, then they're just going to go on them, which is really shitty. But in terms of utility, now they lost Dark Sim, obviously, so that's insanely bad. But Gorfiends is still in the game, and so is Death Grip as well. So now I'm telling you right now, guys, there's some really good uses for these in 5-mans. We'll talk about that when we get there. But Yeah, those are really, you can't count those out. You really can't. They don't have a stun anymore, but they have the Gorfiends obviously is a baseline now, and I think it's going to be really mandatory for Mythic Plus. Like I really do. I think Blood is going to be the best like tank to facilitate damage and times and speeds and stuff. So how about their 5-man situation? I'm gonna say they're as strong as ever in 5-mans. Obviously, like Dark Simming and stuff like that is gone, but their kit in general has even retained its strength, if anything, if not bolstered it. So the more targets you have, the more healing you can do as well, especially with the artifact, which is just insane. It's just really silly. And Blood Boil does way too much. It still does like 30% of your damage on AoE, so it's crazy. In Nathalarian's Lair and Halls of Valor, those 2 dungeons specifically, there's a type of mob in each of them that just refuses to be in melee range. They're like hunter mobs. They try to like disengage away. So having grips for that it's just a DPS boost. Like you just increase the damage that your group is doing by gripping that mob. There's no other tank in the game that can do that. There's no other tank that can increase the damage like that. So that's really, it's really underrated if you ask me. And then a raid situation, topic there is that healing and absorbs make them, I feel like, the best tank, honestly, because you get hit really, really, really hard. Do you understand? So when you could heal up that, you basically need to go back to Wrath, right, where you could rely on a healer to heal you every global kind of thing. Every time you do a fight, you have a healer just healing the tanks. The Blood Death Knight is going to be able to mitigate a lot of that healing needed because of, first of all, the Bone Shield absorb, and then of course your health percentage healing. So it's really, really, really good. I think they're going to be really strong for progression. But they can top the HPS chart, and of course, I think their burst damage reduction options are considerably more limited. So that's the big issue there. They have no Icebound Fortitude. They can take Rune Tap or whatever it's called, but it's just not as good. They don't have a good reduction is really the big issue. It's a lot harder to reduce damage as a Blood Death Knight. So, but you just got to rely on your high health pool and your healing. And that's pretty much how it's been. That's how it was in Cataclysm. It was even more so like that in Cataclysm. Then in Mop and Wad, they kind of changed them to a more balanced tank. But yeah, I think they're still really good, man. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that shakes out for them. Now it's time for the Paladin. The Protection Paladin's defensive kit and CDs are very interesting. So let's talk about that first. They have a lot of different types of CDs, guys. They have Guardian and Argent Defender still as well. And those are really, 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 really strong. Guardian is now a 5-minute CD. It actually changes you into the Guardian, which is it's really cool. And it's a 50% reduction, guys. So this weighs really, really high in this game. It's one of the best CDs in the game, and most classes don't even have this type of reduction anymore. So the fact that Paladin still has it, that goes a long way. It really, really does. And then there's also, Bubble actually has a talent that you could allow to be used as a CD as well. When you use Bubble, you taunt everything within so many yards. So it's really good in dungeons, or maybe, if you're tanking for a little bit and stuff like that. So, and they still have land hands. It's like, what the hell, man? Their kit is insanely strong. Like, it's so strong. It's unbelievable. Now, in terms of damaging CDs, Avenging Wrath returns, so that's really cool. I mean, first real time we've gotten using that. It was good in Mop, but it's really good now. And they still have Seraphim, but it's a lot harder to use. And the reason it's harder to use is because Shield of the Righteous is also your active mitigation. So your best damaging ability is actually your active mitigation, which is, I don't think there's nothing else like that tank-wise. So in order to do damage, you have to forgo active mitigation. Like, you're not forgoing it. You're still getting it when you use it for damage. But using it on the pull is not usually the time you want to pop all your active mitigation. So I don't know, man. I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like their damage has a really low skill ceiling, too. Like, you just drop Consecrate, and then the other abilities get better when they're in Consecrate, and it just doesn't feel very good, honestly. Like, it doesn't feel like you're doing very much, so I don't like that very much at all. In terms of mobility, they're like tied for DKs, honestly. They're a step above DKs because our talent, they actually have a talent to reduce the CD of a Steed charge, and it could actually make it into a defensive CD too, which is kind of cool. But The big thing is that it's not a channel. So while you're on that mount, you could still do everything that your character can do. You can drop consecrate, you can do damage while you're on the mount, etc. So that's the one reason that Paladin's actually better. But in general, they're basically the same. They have the same problem. They only have one mobility, and it's actually quite bad. So in terms of utility, their 90 talent tier functions as some sort of utility, basically like a heal or the protection talent. It's pretty cool, actually. It's probably going to be good for raids, but in general, for 5-mans, they have absolutely nothing. I mean, you could bop somebody, but that's probably not going to help the raid or the 5-man. And you could still put sack on somebody, but then you take their damage. So I don't know. It's just bad. They have almost no utility at all as a paladin. So especially for 5-mans, they are literally barren. They have nothing they can do. And then, so, you know, coming on to the 5-man situation, obviously their utility and mobility and their damage lead me to believe that they are going to be the worst 5-man tank in the video game. Just especially for Mythic Plus, like, you need to have something other than mitigation and tanking, you know, like they're really, 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 really strong. The kit itself, mitigation wise, is so good. It makes me think that, you know, that will actually balance it out, because, you know, being able to charge into a pack and bubble, you know what I mean, an immunity for 8 seconds and have everything attack you still is like, okay, so, you know, maybe it's that good that your utility and, you know, damage and stuff won't matter. As of right now, I'm not happy with their 5-man kit at all, but their raid situation is really crazy. They definitely have the most boisterous mitigation kit of the tanks currently, and I would say probably of any tank ever. I mean, AD, all right, is still a cheat death. Bubble with Final Stand talent gives them an immunity, all right, while tanking. I don't think there's ever been a tank with an immunity while tanking before. And then they still have lay on hands. It's like, what? So, you know, you're about to die, you lay on hands yourself. Then you have forbearance. Then, you know, big damage comes up. Well, I just immuned it. I literally did not take damage from it. Oh, next big damage. Okay, I have a cheat death. Start from scratch. You know, it's like, what the hell are you playing? It's so crazy. It's going to be hard to convince me that they're not the best tank for reducing damage. Now, I know, you know, there's some other tanks have really good reduction, but like these things that we just talked about are insane. And then plus they still have a 50% reduction on Guardian. It's like, what the fuck? It's just insane. So I think they're still outpaced by DKs just because self-healing is going to be so important. But like a really skilled Paladin is going to be able to just fucking make some of these fights look like a complete joke. Protection Warrior next up, and we'll start right with their defensive kit. They're very reduction minded. It's quite odd, actually. They have no self-healing really at all, and but Ignore Pain does have the potential to be the best active mitigation in the game. It's very easy to use, but it's kind of boring. I don't know. Then they still have Shield Wall and other stuff, so I think like their reduction kit is really, really strong. I think they have some of the stronger reductions in the game. You know, it's up there with Paladin for sure, and most players don't even have a reduction now, you know, most specs. So in terms of their damaging, you know, CDs and damaging kit in general, I find it to kind of be the same way. Like it's very boring. It has the potential to be good. In fact, their artifact is literally only damage. I think that's the only artifact for tanks in the game that does only damage. But yeah, it's really interesting because they have a battle cry. It's like Battle Cry, I think the name of it is. It's like a 5 seconds? Yeah, 5 seconds with 100% crit. So they have the potential to do very good AoE or even just single target damage in that window. But it's just really boring. Like, it's really, I feel like there's nothing going on there, and I just don't really enjoy it. But, you know, that being said, their mobility is their strong point for sure. They're definitely middle of the pack mobility. It's like, if you're below them in terms of mobility, you're bad, I think is the way to look at it. So they can still charge. It's called Intervene now. You can charge a player or you can charge a mob, whatever. And then Leap's changed dramatically. Like it's really good now, actually. They dramatically increased the pathing for Leap, so that's really cool. I'm really excited about that, actually, because it means both Demon Hunter and Warriors Leaps are really good now, and you can do some really cool things with them. So yeah, this is a really high point for them. And then utility is an even higher point for them, guys. I really believe that they have the single best utility in the entire video game. It's really crazy, actually. Inspiring Presence is the name of it. It's 3% leech for everybody. And, when you're talking about, you have like, you know, you have 30, maybe 30 some people in a raid, obviously 20 in mythic progression. That can really add up. Leech is really 3% leech. That is insanely, that's a high amount. That's a really good. So I think that's going to be one of the best tank utilities in the game. I think it really stands above almost all the other ones because it's just this passive heal for every single person. And then they still have Shockwave for AoE, you know, for 5-man situations. So what does that leave them in the 5-man situation? I consider tanks to be, they need self-healing. Okay, you need self-healing to be a 5-man tank, honestly. So they have none, but they have some really good mitigation. So, you know, if you play it well, you can still do very good things. You can still do good damage too. Their damage kit is pretty, it's pretty good. It's good damage at least. It's just really boring. But of course, you know, with Shockwave and Inspiring Presence, they have a pretty good kit for 5-man still. Like, Inspiring Presence can actually be pretty good. It's kind of like a poor man's AG, you know, the old AG from Shaman. Like, the more damage you do, the more you leech. So that's pretty cool. And now what about a raid situation? I find them to be just a notch below Paladins. Like, everything I said about Paladins is true here as well. Their mitigation is probably on par, if not even better. But it's a lot easier to use, that's for sure. Active mitigation is so easy to use. Ignore pain is just, you literally just press it every couple rage and it's pretty good. Their lack of self-healing, though, is what really worries me. Like, you know, Paladins have a really good mitigation kit, but their actual healing is crazy too. Whereas, you know, Warriors have probably same strength in terms of mitigation, but their healing is non-existent. So that's kind of a big deal to me. I feel like with how much damage tanks are receiving, you need to have at least some way to heal. Even if it's not the best, like it feels mandatory. So I'm a little bit worried about Warriors for that reason. But yeah, really, it's just they're just, you know, not that exciting, and they have no self-healing, so they kind of rank low for me currently. And we conclude with Guardian Druid, Bear Tank specifically. All right, so we'll get onto their defensive kit and defensive CDs. They have very, very strong CDs. Their CDs are probably like pound for pound the strongest in the game, but many are tied to a high rage cost or sometimes high CD, like high cooldown time. So I think they're going to require a skillful player, like really, really skillful, honestly. They feel like they have like the highest skill cap in terms of their defensive kit, but they seem incredibly strong. The one thing that does worry me, though, is their self-heal. It's a hot... it seems like it's pretty good. Like it seems on par with the Death Knight ones, but it's a hot. So yeah, I don't know. A burst heal is always better in my book, always better. And when you're like talking about a hot as a tank, you're often getting overhealed. So that's obviously not very good. So anyway, in terms of damaging CDs and damage rotation stuff, I feel like they're very much a jack of all trades. Like I think this really goes for all of their, you know, both defensive and mobility, everything. They're all just kind of like, it's all kind of like they can do a lot of different things. But one thing that I really like about their damage is this model of Thorns damage. It's really cool, actually, as well as different talents and stuff like that that go with it. I think it's probably one of the more interesting things. Like I've always kind of liked that from tanks. Like I used to love when, you know, Retribution Ore did a good amount of damage and stuff for Paladins, but they actually have a lot of different talents that can greatly affect how they do damage as well. So like I said, just very versatile, kind of like all over the place. They can do, if they take none of these talents, maybe they're limited, but if they take all these talents, or, you know, different talents do different things. So it's very, very cool. It'd be hard to sit here and discuss all of that, though. So in terms of mobility, this is definitely their greatest drawback. Their mobility has been severely limited at 7.0, and the main reason is because the one talent tree basically has Charge is on there, and then Displacer Beast is on there too, but on that is also Guttural Roars, I believe is the name. It's basically like a mandatory talent if your raid is going to need Stampeding Roar. As of like the baseline of Stampeding Roar is not very good, but with that talent, it's actually extremely good. So if for some reason, well, I mean, to be honest, if you are a Druid in this raid, you better be using that. We'll talk about that in a second, but like that's a really difficult choice then. It makes your mobility basically non-existent. Without Charge, I don't know if they have mobility, and they certainly don't have any that's in bear form, so that's a big detractor for me. But their utility is really cool. They do have some nice utility with different talents and stuff, but they are still the only spec out of all Druids that have Stampeding Roar. So like I said, the Guttural Roars, that talent is actually probably like really mandatory, because yeah, you're going to need this. This is really useful. So yeah. You still have battle res too. You can use battle res in bear form now. I think it costs like 5 rage or something like that. So that's a cool little change. But they don't really have any 5-man utility outside of Stampeding Roar. They have no stunner or anything like that. Now, their 5-man situation, the Thorn style damage, I feel like that can be really useful in 5-mans. But in general, I feel like they're kind of just like a Mario. You know what I mean? Like they can kind of do everything well. They're good at most things, but they're not amazing at anything. And I fear that their high skill cap CDs are going to make them a lot harder to play in 5-man progression than will be rewarding. Like you're going to have to really work your ass off to get the rage and, you know, do good damage and keep the pace elevated and all this properly. So I think like in general, like Warrior just, you know, kind of does what they do just as well. But I don't know. It's up to you guys if you really like Bear. But so their raid situation now, I feel like they're in a really good place. I would definitely say that they have, you know, they can gain an insane health pool from Mastery, guys. Hopefully you've checked out these changes. Like it's really different, but they're extremely different from WoD. So if you played these in WoD, this bear tank, it's kind of like them in Monk. Like they've done a complete 180. So I don't know. It's really good for raids, but it's going to be hard to get used to for a lot of people, I'd imagine. I feel like their CDs could mitigate and heal just a ton, but yeah, they require a lot of effort, and you really need to know the fights well, because if you use it wrong, that's a lot of rage you just wasted there, you know what I mean? So, all right, guys, so that's all the tanks discussed. Now we'll do a bit of a comparison. All right, so these are just based on the things I talked about. Like I said, mostly opinions, so please, if you're if you're considering this basis as to be like the end-all be-all to what you're going to play in Legion, please don't do that. Please go actually play the spec and class that you want to play, all right? But from this is how I see it for these few categories. In terms of 5-man progression tank, I'm going to go ahead and say Blood, then Vengeance, then Brewmaster, then Warrior, then Bear, then Paladin. I like Blood as the number 1 because they have Gorfine's Grasp. They have some good, stuff like that. And of course, prime time healing. Very, very good. Vengeance is number 2 because they have very, very good healing as well and insane mobility. Brewmaster is number 3 because they have insane mobility and insane burst damage. Warrior is number 4 because they have good mobility and some decent damage. And Bear and Paladin are at the bottom because they don't have very good mobility. And they don't have very good utility. So in terms of raid progression, I'm going to go ahead and say Paladin, then Blood, then Bear, then Warrior, then Vengeance, then Brewmaster. I like Paladin as number 1 because I feel like that immunity and AD usage as well as a 50% reduction are going to be extremely strong. Like I can't see how they won't be the best. But I like Blood as a close second because I really favor healing in progression. I feel like it's going to be really important with how the tank and healing model works now. The more healing you can do, the easier the fight's going to be. I like Bear for both of those reasons because they're a very good mix of both of the two things. They have very good mitigation and very good self-healing, but of course they require a higher skill cap, and that health pool definitely helps them as well. I like Warrior after that because they kind of have a little bit of, the flashes of brilliance of Paladin. They have really good mitigation, but they're below these ones because they have no real self-healing. I like Vengeance next because Vengeance has good self-healing. It's not going to be the best in raids, and I feel like they're a little too squishy currently. So I think they'd be pretty gear dependent for progression rating, and progression rating obviously happens when you're not very geared. Brewmaster is finally the final one because they are extremely gear dependent. The more haste they have, the better. I don't know about their set bonuses, but as of right now, I feel like they're very weak for like most fights, but they can be very good if they have the right setup around them. In terms of self-healing, I like Blood, Vengeance, then Bear, then Paladin, then Brewmaster, and Warriors all the way at the bottom. They shouldn't even be on the list. Blood obviously has the best self-healing in the game, especially if we're talking about an encounter with multiple mobs. Vengeance has stable self-healing. It's very good, but I don't think it'll be enough. It's definitely not comparable to Blood side by side. Bear actually has some really good self-healing, but it is a hot, like I said, so it's going to be a little bit more difficult to use. But I kind of like loop their mastery with the high health pool into the self-healing there. Paladin has probably the best single heal, but it's a very long CD, and their actual regular healing is not the best. Brewmaster is not bad, really. It's good for 5-mans, but it just won't be very good in actual raids. And then, of course, Warrior does not have a heal that they can use to heal themselves regularly. In terms of mitigation, I like Paladin, then Bear, then Warrior, then Brewmaster, then Vengeance, and then Blood, obviously, at the very bottom. Shouldn't even be on the list. Paladin is, in my opinion, the best mitigator, like I said a bunch of times now, because of the immunity, the cheat death, and, of course, the 50% reduction. All these things are just insane. And that's not even counting their active mitigation. So they're unrivaled there. Bear actually has really good different types of mitigation. They have some really good ones, but they're really a little bit more skill capped to use. Warriors are really good too, but they're very basic and boring. So I worry, how they're going to match up against a complicated encounter. In terms of Brewmaster, I feel like they have a very niche mitigation. They can mitigate a really strong, like if there's a fight that has a really strong damaging attack, they are the gods of it. Vengeance is kind of the low man on the totem pole because they have no real strong CD. They have a strong, a low current CD, but it doesn't really match up for progression rating or mitigation of high damage. And then Blood, of course, cannot mitigate damage in any way other than, they're very, very situational. They have some talents, and, I guess you can count Bone Shield, but in general, they are very weak mitigators. They just heal a lot. And then finally, in terms of mobility and kiting, I have Vengeance, then Brewmaster, then Warrior, then Bear, then Paladin, then Blood. Vengeance will definitely be the king of kiting if at all needed. I don't know if there'll be raid bosses that need it, but it could be useful in 5-mans. Brewmaster is not far behind them, and they lack a slow in any way to kind of prevent the mobs from catching up to them. But of course they have the roll talents. Warrior is still just as good. They can, Heroic Leap is actually really strong. That has some talent synergy as well, and then they can charge to either a player or the mob itself. Bear is not too bad because they still have Stampeding Roar and, of course, can go calf form, but otherwise they couldn't do much. And then Paladin and Blood pretty much have absolutely no way of tanking or kiting without any type of grip or some type of external help. So that's all I really have to say on the topic, guys. I'm very passionate about tanking. I really love doing it in 5-man, and it's fun in raiding too. So if you guys have any questions at all, please let me know. Once again, I just want to say this one more time. I really hope that you guys base your decisions on your own experiences, okay? This is just kind of me helping you form your opinion, not forming it for you. Honestly, I feel a little guilty about making a video like this because, first of all, this is mostly, you can't really tell what the best tank is going to be until actual raid progression starts. And I'm not just talking about the first tier either, this is going to be a multi-raid first tier. So there's always that to consider, but either way, I think, to be honest, the tanking model is really cool. I think almost all tanks, the differences I'm describing here are really minute. A good player can make any tank work. And people say Brewmaster's bad, but it still has some really great strong points, stuff like that. So just keep that in mind, all right? Like I said, if you have any questions whatsoever, I'll happily answer them. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching, and I hope you guys enjoy Legion.